Hello, everybody. This is Greg Traynor with Wyndham-Lyons Realty Services, and I am here with my special guest, Charlie, with the Thompson Law Firm. He specializes in divorce, and want to give you a chance to say hi and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, Greg. Good morning. Charlie Rogers, Thompson Law in Milford, Ohio. Primarily a general practice firm. I handle a lot of the domestic relation cases that our firm is involved with, along with other areas that overlap, such as probate and sometimes general civil litigation. So as far as a background, I've gone through the Supreme Court Family Law Mediation Training Program, worked with Legal Aid Society when I was first starting, which was a very valuable resource for me and gave me access to a lot of information and people that have been very, very helpful along the way in my practice.
Great. So one of the reasons why we're on today is Charlie and I work together. We feel like we are part of his team in helping his clients get to the finish line and bookending their domestic litigation issues. And we want to talk about some of the common hiccups and some of the traps that folks fall into if they don't have that team approach from the attorney down to the other folks that surround them through that entire process. So we call it the divorce credit trap. And we want to talk about some of those things to try to make sure that you don't make the same mistake as a person that's preparing for getting a divorce. We do sell a lot of homes and the showcase team at Wyndham-Lyons Real Estate. So we see a lot of those problems when they don't have a full team surrounding them, as far as making sure that at the very end of this process, you don't have some issues that pop up that you thought were taken care of years ago. So one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody understands is, and I know you know it because you go into it, Charlie, you see the clients first. You know that it's a hostile, you're not getting a divorce or a dissolution because everything's going well.
Right.
So it's a very hard thing. It's the second most stressful situation you can go through in your life, besides the death of a spouse and a parent, or a parent and a child. So we're putting a lot of emotionally charged things in at the same time. And I don't know how many times, how much of your time at the beginning is spent on that.
Well, you're very much on point. It is a very highly emotional, stressful situation. It's important for an attorney to realize that and know that, because an attorney, when referred to as a counsel, the reason for that is a lot of it is personal counseling, helping people through situations that are the biggest thing going on in their life right at that point. And as far as the attorney understanding that each person that comes to you, especially with domestic relations issues, is because something's gone wrong. And that's why they're there. They need help. And it's very important for the attorney to know that, to recognize that, and do everything they can first to counsel the client, to give them a vision and security of this is how it's going to happen. This is how the court system works, and there's no reason to have fear. So that's what you
really
want
important.
to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah, and not to get sidetracked by that fear and emotion while you're going through this. This is of any time in your life. I think it's important to keep the those things at the minimum and try to stay focused on it. And having a great attorney like Charlie that can really help direct you and guide you in that position is so important. One of the things that a lot of people, they know that it's coming. They've gone through the untying emotional type items with their other spouse. And now it comes down to that business side of what do I need to do to get ready to come in and talk to my attorney. So
Right.
I'll let you talk about some of the things that are very helpful. So that first appointment with you when you're starting this process is efficient and as productive as possible for you and your client.
Yeah, and that's what this highly emotional situation has now been reduced at the beginning of any kind of divorce proceeding or even dissolution. It's like you said, it becomes like a business transaction. There's a lot of paperwork involved. It's laying out your life and everything about you in paper form. The court's going to want to know, the information on the marriage, information of your family, children, any account that you have that has to be disclosed, assets that you have, what's the value in your retirement, whose name is it under. What we've done that has been very helpful is to put together all the information and documents that we need in the form of a questionnaire. So we'll send that to client. It helps the client get organized. It lets us know that it's a full disclosure, because these are affidavits. You're swearing and attesting to certain items that are contained in these court filings, that we can now see and make proper representation to the court of all that information. It's also going to be items like proof of income, whether that's a W-2 or last 3 or 4 payroll stubs, who you work for, employer. There's a lot of items, and it could be very imposing for someone that's not familiar with it, that doesn't do it every day. When you're trying to do it on your own, you're getting on the website and think, hey, I can fill out some forms. Well, it only takes one little thing in those forms that doesn't accurately reflect the situation, and then becomes a court order that pops up, down the road 5 years from then. And that's why it's important to see an attorney to make sure that everything's done correctly.
Gotcha. And then for clarification, for a lot of folks, they don't know the difference between a divorce and a dissolution. Can you explain the difference between those two, and why, when it's important to know which direction you're going in when you're getting ready to speak with you for the first time?
Sure. A divorce is a person suing their spouse. It's litigation. They are they're making claims, and they are asking for a reaction to that. Okay. So there's going to be the complaint for divorce, and then a petition for dissolution. Dissolution is basically boiled down to an agreement or contract that you've agreed with your spouse. This is how we're going to divide everything. These are going to be the terms of whatever parenting plan that we have, and we're in full agreement. And we present that to the court as a petition. And then in about 45 to 60 days, you have one hearing, and your marriage is dissolved. With the divorce being a lawsuit, you have to serve the papers on the other party. So you can have a sheriff showing up if your spouse is, sometimes your house that you're living in with them. It can lead to things like pre-trials, discovery. It's an actual lawsuit. So that's the primary difference. Now, sometimes a dissolution can roll into a divorce, or what starts out that people are looking at as a dissolution, where they believe that they're going to agree to all terms, but maybe one of them, for whatever reason, doesn't sign the papers. So the next thing you know, a month's passed, 3 months have passed. People, as of yesterday, somebody where it's been 3 years, they've been living in the same house, and the dissolution papers have been sitting on the table and never got signed. So in that situation, you file for the divorce to force a reaction, and then you can still come to the same terms that you would under the dissolution, but it's forcefully imposing a separation of your marriage upon the other spouse.
Got it. One thing that I hear a lot from our clients who come to us first, divorce, of course, you were just saying they're suing the other spouse. With a dissolution, can you have the same attorney for both of you? For
No.
both of the, okay. I've heard that our attorney has drawn up, and I've always wondered, by the end of it, that's a different story.
Yeah. So what generally happens, first things first, is that, and I've had a lot of married couples come in and say, this is what we want to agree to. There's no issues. I have to make it clear to one of them that I do not represent them, that I only represent the person that I first contacted and spoke with. And that if they want to seek guidance from another attorney, they have the right to do so, and I recommend to do so always. Right. But that has to be made clear. You can only represent one person in domestic relations. Yeah, and that's important, because when I hear our attorney on a dissolution, somebody's misunderstood something in there. Now, there is a process called collaborative law, where the attorney, you meet with one attorney, the couple does, and you sign an agreement with that attorney to work collaboratively, but also agree not to bring them into court as representation. So you come to agreement, you sign everything, you know that you're working with an attorney, and then you go file the dissolution on your own. So that would be the only situation I could think where that you had one attorney, but still the attorney isn't providing representation. It's more of a more of guidance and almost like a mediator kind of situation.
Great. So this is really the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk about today too. Having the list and the items that you send over the questionnaire and having those ready for you helps move to this next step. And for us as real estate agents, being a part of your team to help move through this process, one of the things that we have a passion for, and the reason why we do this, is because we've seen so many circumstances, Charlie, where somebody's trying to move on 3 or 4 years after they've either been divorced or had their marriage dissolved. And something pops up that they absolutely didn't expect, and it sets them back another 6 months, a year to try to get these things repaired. So we want to talk about some of the things you can do up front to make sure that those things don't come back and bite you later.
Right. Yeah, and I see a lot of that, and you're correct. It goes back to whatever is ordered by the court needs to be correct. It needs to be clear. Any future issues need to be addressed at that time through that order. Often, not often, but sometimes a situation is where one of the spouses is staying in the house. And if someone stays in the house and there's a mortgage on the house, then that means that if there's a court order saying that the property was to be sold or refinanced in this person's name or that, you have someone paying down on equity. If you have a court order that says the property is to be sold and equally divided, and somebody's been sitting in the house for 5 years paying on the mortgage, they eventually go to sell the house. Mm-hmm. And when they go to sell the house, there's this court order that pops up in the title work that says that the proceeds are going to be equally divided. What does that mean? Does that mean that the 5-year equity build is going to be now half of it goes to the other spouse that didn't pay down on it? So right. It can lead to a very litigious situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's got to be a complicated process, and trying to figure out the formulas to that at those points have to be next to them. Well, not impossible, but frustrating to get to an agreement. One of the things you and I talked about, the important part is getting that your credit report, and not just one of those free creditreport.coms. And we can discuss why that is. Why don't we want to have one of those free credit report things necessarily to find out what our debts are?
Right.
And that's because a lot of those don't report all 3 bureaus. And we've seen where if somebody has used one of those services, their credit may be on the spouse's debt, a credit card, something that right. They had absolutely no knowledge of. And it may be innocent when you're filling out those forms that you're talking about, your questionnaires that you have to present, may be innocent. They had no idea that they had put their other spouse on that debt. And so knowing those things up front and having that team surrounding you that can get you access to those things. Charlie, what was the place that you just mentioned earlier that will give you all 3 bureaus?
Annualcreditreport.com will allow you once a year for free to access your credit report from all 3 agencies. That's a very good resource. But kind of going back to as far as the credit debt, the agreement that you come to as part of the divorce or dissolution, when people have debt and it is in their name and they signed a contract for it, then they become legally obligated to pay that debt under a contract situation. So even if you come to an agreement through the divorce stating that this debt is assigned to the other person, if that person doesn't fully pay the debt off as part of the divorce or shortly thereafter, then sometime down the road, if they don't make payments, you're going to end up, like you said, it's going to be detrimental to your credit. You're going to start receiving collections. You're going to be named in a lawsuit. And you believe that because you have a court order saying that the debt is allocated to the other spouse, that you shouldn't be obligated to pay it. Well, perhaps that's called an indemnification process. That if it did get to court through a collections action, then you have to essentially countersue your spouse and say that there's an existing court order saying that they would pay for it and that you should be obligated. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to make sure whatever order is put in place by the domestic relations court has finality to it, is short-term in nature, that any transfers to be taking place or retitling, whatever, within 30 days or 60 days, so that you know that there's only a short amount of time to allow for whatever needs to be done to be done. And if not, it's still in your purview that there's something that needs to be done. Because if it's something where the terms are a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you've moved on with your life at that point, you forget about it. And then next thing you know, and what we see a lot, because we have a title company as well, is that it usually pops up when you go to buy a house, right? And that's what you're saying. You got your credit pulled, and now you see on there that, oh gosh, my spouse didn't do this right, and now my credit score is down 50 points just because of this one old credit card that I forgot to have him pay off or whatever.
Right. And sometimes, Charlie, what happens is it's not because they aren't paying on something. And the biggest thing is a mortgage. The other spouse continues to, they were awarded the home and the judge said, you have to pay the mortgage on it. Well, both of them, when they purchased the home, even though the deed was taken out of their name, the mortgage stayed in both. It was the note that they signed. It's, even though the judge says you don't have to pay it, doesn't mean that you don't owe it. And when it comes on to your credit, your new bank that you're going to go to, even if your spouse has made all those payments on time and everything has been perfect on the credit history, they're still going to count that debt against you. So they look at your income and your debts. They're going to say, well, there's a $1,400 a month payment on 123 Main Street. You don't qualify for the new house. And then now you have to go back to the spouse. You have to get them to refinance that debt. Maybe the spouse can't refinance that debt. So it's so important to have somebody like Charlie that knows what these traps are and what to look for. And like you said, make it a short term. Don't let this thing carry out for years without an answer to it.
And that's what, early on in the process, I wanted to ask those questions as far as what are you doing with the house? What's the equity in the house? What's your credit like? Because do you want to hold off on filing the dissolution if there's going to be an agreement, because the spouse that's going to take the house needs to work on the credit? And you'll see a lot of times simultaneously the divorce process or dissolution process along with the refinancing process. And sometimes it's delayed because, like we've made pretty clear, you want to get this taken care of in the short term. Preferably, it's already done before you even file anything with the court. I'll hold off on filings, letting the person build their credit up so that we have either a closing date for the refinance or they've been approved. So we have something solid going forward, and we know that that's not going to be an issue. So that's how I like to address it, right? You want to preempt any future issues that might come about.
Right. And we have on the team as well, people that can help, people that we know in this situation how to deal with it, with refinancing or helping with the purchase of a new home. So we have great trusted lenders that are well-versed in these situations that are on the team as well. So with each one of these type of things, I guess the options are, you can either sell it outright, whether it's the home, the car, close the credit card, or close the personal loan and pay it off. It can be refinanced as the other option in the other spouse's name. But you just want to make sure to follow up to afterwards. After this is complete, just don't rely that your spouse has done this. Pull your credit report again.
Right. And a couple points there. As far as some of my favorite clients are ones that either sold their house or have refinanced it and assigned title to the one that's going to take it, and took the proceeds from either the sale or the refinance and paid off all the debt. And then they come to me and say, Charlie, I want to file a dissolution. And we've taken care of all the debt, property issues, everything's ready. It's just, filing a couple forms with the court and you're done. So yeah, absolutely. That's something, like I said, early on or even before is better than having to deal with it either through the course of a divorce or after.
Right, where we've seen sometimes where they have to take their spouse back to court and oh my goodness, I just lost the word for it since I'm not an attorney. Contempt of court.
Yeah, contempt,
yeah.
type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, also, when I said a couple points, the second one being that I got sidetracked a little bit there, but you also want to look at when you are selling the house or doing the refinance, and there's also either divorce or dissolution on the table. You want to see an attorney before or during that process of the refi or sale, because if you take a look at the source of the down payment, was it from a premarital asset? Was it from a premarital account? Was it from an inheritance, right? So those types of items would be extracted out of the total proceeds from the refi or sale. And those are things that a person is going to be entitled to. So you want to look at that. You want to say, okay, am I, by just agreeing how we're going forward, am I losing out tens of thousands of dollars? House is typically a person's largest asset, largest thing of value that they have. And it's important to know your entitlement as far as that house is involved.
Yep. And, kind of coming to the conclusion on this, Charlie, is it really all boils down to surrounding yourself with great professionals that are going to help you put a bookend to make sure that you can turn the page and move on, that after this painful process is finished, that you can start your new life and make that next first step into a great future. So doing that, you have to have a great team. You have to have a great attorney like Charlie that's going to guide you through the process, who has team members like us here at Wyndham-Lyons Realty Services for the real estate information and needs, having a great lender that we work with that can assess your situation and help you move on and plan for the future. And also to the third, what we call the third step or third leg on our stool, which is the financial planner. And we'll get into this maybe another day, but the financial planner typically in a divorce situation, if there are assets and investments like that, that typically the same person isn't kept by both spouses. So having somebody that you can know and trust and figure out how those things can benefit you in the future is important as well. So,
Absolutely.
So in getting to this, being prepared, making sure you're doing these things up front, how does somebody get in touch with you, Charlie?
Well, the easiest way is going to be, because just the nature of being an attorney is usually going to be email. Our website allows for access through a front desk kind of, I would like to speak with an attorney kind of request, and then we can find the one that's going to be better suited. So while I might concentrate more on division of assets with my types of divorce, where we have another attorney, where if there's custody issues as part of the divorce, then that person might be better able to assist the client. So our website is cincilaw.com, cincilaw.com. And that's probably going to be the easiest way to get a hold of us, since if I am running around a court or I'm busy in mediations or settlement conferences and things like that, a lot of times getting that immediate response or pick up the phone, it just isn't something with most law firms that is going to be expected or should be expected. So things that can be organized and sent over in writing in the request, make clear I would like to speak or have issues with this. Can we schedule something? So by email or through the our website, and my email is crogers, CROGERS at cincilaw, cincilaw.com, and that's probably going to be the best way to reach out.
Great, and I appreciate your time today, Charlie. I can vouch for you. Great domestic lawyer. If you do need to get a hold of us here at Wyndham-Lyons Realty Services, you can go to our website, wyndhamlyons.com. That's WYNDHAMLYONS.com. You can get a hold of us directly at the office at our phone number at 513-322-2905. Whether you're an attorney that's looking for a team to form around you, or if you're somebody that's looking and having to go through this process, we are here for you. So give us a call. Charlie, again, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
All right. Thanks, Greg.